Okay, so that's a real case of the distribution of ads, or let's say of opportunities on Facebook, and that shows how that that distributive balance could be understood in terms of fairness, and more importantly for this segment, in terms of equity or solidarity, or giving the greatest advantage to the least advantaged. Now, let's look at some comparisons between fairness and equity, because this is where this is really the key part of this presentation. Um, so I'm going to just run through this list and explain each one as a way of trying to sort out these two ways of distributing opportunities. First is, as we've said, just definitionally, fairness traces back to the ancient Greeks and Aristotle. Equals treated equally and unequals unequally, proportionally unequally. Whereas by contrast for roles and equity, the greatest advantage is distributed to the least advantaged. For fairness, the process justifies the outcome. So if you have a competition, like a golf competition, as long as everyone has the same chance to win, then it doesn't matter what the outcome is. The outcome might be that one person is way ahead of everyone else, or it might be that there's two or three people who are way behind. But that doesn't matter. As long as the process is fair, the outcome is good. Whereas by contrast, it's the opposite for equity. For equity, the outcome justifies the process. And so in this case, just think of the family golfing. The family golfing, they will give free strokes to the children, as many as are necessary, until we get to the point where at the end of each hole, the children and the adults have about an equal score. And if at the end everyone has about an equal score, then the process is good. And it doesn't matter what the process is. You might give one free stroke, two free strokes, 5, 10. It doesn't matter. The process is irrelevant. What matters is the outcome. And as long as the outcome is close, the process is good. Um, Another way to distinguish between these two is that equality applies to opportunities for fairness. So what is fair is the opportunity to win at golf. What is fair is the opportunity to get ahead. Whereas by contrast with equity, equality applies to the outcome. What matters is at the end, everyone is about the same. So you give some people who are falling behind, you give them special help. And again, we do this in families all the time, but we don't do it in sports. Um, Equality is about verbs. Equity, it says equality, but it is meant to be equity is about nouns. Equality is about verbs. That means what you can do. Equality, verbs, fairness, those things mixed, they tend to be about what you do in the world. You win at golf and therefore you're good. Equity is about who you are. So if you're a child and you're falling behind your parents in the golf match, then because you're a child, you get this advantage. Or because you are a member of one or another group, you get this advantage. So equity starts with nouns. Who are you? And thereby distributes opportunities. Fairness starts with verbs. What do you do? How well do you do? And in that way distributes opportunities. Um, then, for fairness, society is a collection of individuals, while for equity, individuals are aspects of a larger society. What this means is fairness looks at a society and understands it in terms of individuals. Um, and let me go to the next division because that will clarify. Ideal treatment of individuals dictates subsequent society versus ideal vision of society dictates subsequent treatment of individuals. So what this and the previous mean in both cases is the following. For fairness, you start with individuals. And if individuals are treated ethically, that is, they're treated fairly, then the resulting society is good. What it means to have a good society is one where individuals are treated equally. That's what it means to have a good society. Whereas equity reverses that. Equity says a good society is where everyone is equal, and that will dictate how we treat the individuals. So for fairness, we want everyone to have an equal opportunity, and that dictates how we design society. Equity says we want everyone to be equal in the end, and that dictates how we will treat individuals. Everything depends upon where you start, which you privilege. Fairness will always privilege the individual and say we want individuals to have equal chances, every individual treated the same. And as long as that happens, whatever arises is a good society. Whereas equity will always start with the society. Say we want everyone in the society to be the same, to be equal. And then we treat individuals in whatever way is necessary to make sure that we end up with that outcome. Then the paradigmatic case for fairness would be the Olympics, like or professional sports. I mean, everyone wants fairness. No one wants equity in professional sports. In the Olympics, you just want the best performer to win. That's it. You don't want anyone to get special treatment. Whereas, by contrast, the paradigmatic case of equity frequently is a family. In families, equity trumps fairness in many, many situations. Most families run their day to day life, in my experience, on equity. They distribute the greatest advantage to the least advantage. So if mom had a really bad day, then dad does the cooking, right? That's just the way families work. You don't look at see who did the cooking last week or something. Then individuality is the key to fairness. Inclusiveness is the key to equity. Again, fairness means everyone can advance. That's what fairness is about. Everyone has an equal chance to advance. Equity is about no one being left behind. Then finally, the final distinction is one coin flip versus 1 million coin flips. Now, let me explain this. Let's say you have $100, and there's me and you, and there's $100 that we want to distribute it. I think we can agree that a coin flip is a fair way to distribute it. You flip a coin once, and whoever wins gets the money. $100. Perfectly fair. Flip the coin. That's a fair approach, but it's not an equitable approach. What an equitable approach tries to do is leave no one behind. Right? So you want to do coin flips in a way that distributes the money as equally as possible. And so that's why I say 1 million coin flips. Maybe in this case, if it's $100, we would do 100 coin flips. If we do 100 coin flips, each one is worth $1. Then maybe I will win the first coin flip and get $1. I win the second, now I have two, you have none. But the rules of chance are going to tend toward 50-50, right? It's going to tend toward a reality where first I have one, then I have two, but then you get one, then you get two, then you get three, then I get three, then I get four, then you get four, five, six, then I get four, five, six, seven, then eight, nine, goes back and forth. If we coin flip for $1 100 times, at the end, what's going to happen is we're both going to have about $50. So that's equity. That's equity, right? Because at every flip, you're going to tend toward the mean, tend toward 50-50. So every flip brings you closer to a reality where no one is left behind. Just statistically, that's true. So I should say 100 flips, not 1 million, but I think you understand the point. For fairness, it's perfectly fine. One flip, I get 100 or you get 100. That's it. For equity, you've got to keep flipping until no one is left behind. So we both end up with about $50. Okay, I think this is really a key slide. This captures quite well, I think, the fundamental theoretical differences between fairness and equity. Uh, I have a few examples now of how these theoretical differences can be plugged in. Um, we will run through them briskly. One is quite famous. It's called the Wilt Chamberlain thought experiment. It's by someone named Robert Nozick, who was a colleague of John Rawls in the 1970s at Harvard, and he was against John Rawls's idea of equity, strongly against it. And what Nozick said is he said, let's imagine a thought experiment. There's a player in the National Basketball Association. His name was Wilt Chamberlain at the time. That's him. Um, it's a name many of you may not remember, but he was a big star at the time. And Nozick says, let's imagine we have a society where everyone has the same amount of money exactly at the start. And then everyone goes out to get their jobs. And Wilt Chamberlain, who is this great star, negotiates a contract where every time he plays, people who come to see the game pay an extra 25 cents to watch because he's there playing. Why do they pay that? Because he's the one they come to watch. Like when Michael Jordan or LeBron James play a game, it's always filled up because people want to watch them play. What Magic says is, okay, let's just imagine that money goes to Will Chamberlain. Um, he says this is completely fair. No one is being forced to do anything. It, anyone has a chance to be a great basketball player. If someone else is better than Will Chamberlain, they can do the same thing. So this seems perfectly fair and right. And then Natzik says at the end of the season, it turns out that we have a society where one person, Will Chamberlain, has much more money than everyone else. So we have a society with great wealth inequality. What Nozick says is that's perfectly fair. Everyone had an equal opportunity to get ahead. Once this person gets ahead and gets wealthy, that's the way things should remain. Now he's wealthy and good for him. Rawls disagrees. Rawls says society is not about giving people an opportunity to get ahead, it's about not leaving people behind. So at the end of the season, according to Rawls, we should put some heavy taxes on the rich guy, Will Chamberlain, and take his money back and redistribute it to everyone else. Again, maximum advantage to the least advantaged. No one left behind. That's equity. So this simple example is frequently brought up in cases of equity and fairness. Letting Will Chamberlain keep his money, that's fairness, that's Nozick, that's also libertarianism. Taking the money away from Will Chamberlain through taxation, that's equity, that's Rawls, and that's the greatest advantage to the least advantage. Now, I have another quick example. Three people, three boxes. Uh, on the left, in a certain sense, I think you could say that this is fair. Each person gets a box. It's like flipping a coin. There are three people, three boxes. Okay, each person gets a box. The result is two people can see the game and one can't. The middle slide is interesting. I think the middle slide is an example of both fairness and equity. It is an example of fairness because the least advanced, excuse me, it is an example of fairness because unequals are being treated unequally. People who are shorter are being given more boxes. And so in this case, it's fair that the littlest one, the unequal, the shortest person gets the most boxes, and the middle one and the tall none, and now everyone can see the game. So I think that's fairness in action. But that's also equity in action. In this case, equity, the greatest advantage is being given to the least advantaged. So the shortest person gets the most boxes. So I think one of the interesting things about this is in that middle frame, we have both fairness and equity. Then finally, in the last frame, we have a slight change. You see, the tall man can't see. So we have a strange situation where the only person who can't see the game is the tallest person. But because that person is the tallest person, they have the most advantage. And according to equity, the greatest advantage should be given to the least advantaged. That is, the people who are shortest. So, according to equity, the way the boxes would be distributed is one in which two of the three people can see the game, but the one person who can't see is the tallest person. Compare that with the first situation, which is the same. Only two of the three people can see, but the one who can't see is the shortest person. So I think that gives you a good visual representation of the difference between fairness and equity. We have in the one case a situation which is fair but not equitable, where the tallest and the middle height person see the game but not the short person. Then we have a situation which is fair and equitable, where everyone sees. And then we have a situation which is equitable but not fair, where the shortest people get the greatest help. But the result of that is the tallest person is the only one who can't see the game. Okay, one more example, and then we will move on. So we've seen some examples of fairness and equity in comparison. Uh, let's try this thought experiment. Imagine you have two people and one cookie, and you want to distribute that cookie. You can break the cookie in half or whatever you want. How could that cookie be distributed in a way which is both fair and equitable, in a way which is not fair and equitable, or fair and not equitable, or not fair and not equitable. In other words, again, two people, one cookie, you can break the cookie up. How would you do that to satisfy each of those four criteria? What would it mean for the distribution to be fair and equitable? How could you understand it as being fair but not equitable? Or not fair but equitable? Or neither fair nor equitable? Okay, here's one solution. Um, it would be fair and equitable, I think, to just break the cookie in half. Everyone gets half a cookie. In this way, equals are treated equally. Two people each can have the cookie. And the greatest advantage is given to the least advantage because as soon as one person eats part of the cookie, they're less hungry than the other one, so the other person gets a bite, right? You go back and forth like the coin flips until both get the same amount. Um, then fair and not equitable. Well, you could do that coin flip, that a lottery. One person gets the cookie. You could flip a coin and that person gets the whole cookie. That's fair, but it's not equitable because someone is left behind. Maybe not fair but equitable could be the person who missed breakfast, so they are hungrier than the other person, then they get the cookie. And that seems not fair because the person is being rewarded for having missed breakfast, right? For having overslept. They get the reward for sleeping too much. So it doesn't seem fair, but it is equitable because the greatest advantage is being given to the person with the least advantage or with the greatest need, who's most hungry. And then finally, not fair, not equitable. That's easy, and that's like cheating, right? One person eats the cookie while the other is not looking, or just some third person comes in and eats the cookie. Okay, so I've given here well, one final thought. It's quite clear, I think, by now that the idea that equal is treated equally and unequal is treated unequally does correspond in some ways with the idea of solidarity, right? If you're giving the greatest advantage to the least advantaged, then that is a way of treating unequals unequally. One has more advantage, so they get more benefit. Um, but as I say, so for that reason, frequently people get the ideas of fairness and equity confused. That's why you see a lot of confusion between fairness and equity in the literature. People can get hazy about the difference, and that makes sense because as we showed in this middle case here, this is both equity and fairness. It's just important to understand that the logic that leads to that outcome is completely different, and you see that difference in the logic at the two extremes in this case. Or you see the difference in the logic when you look at a golf game between professionals and a family.